Do a little more baseball. CJ Nikowski in a minute. And CJ, analyst for Fox Sports, and you hear him on Saturdays as well. That is 10 to noon Eastern right here on CBS Sports Radio. Matter of fact, he's with us now. CJ Teakin Tierney, what's happening, man?
Not too much. Good morning, guys. How you been?
Doing very well. It's just, I love that, don't get me wrong, and I know you're obviously a baseball guy. I am a baseball guy. But there is a grind part of the season where it gets a little repetitive. But to me, the first week or two of the season is just so intoxicating, just so appealing, because there's so many different stories that are written, yet half of them, the script will flip very soon. What are you seeing right now that others aren't necessarily buying that you are?
Well, there's a lot of good stories, like you mentioned. I think the question becomes which of the teams maybe that have gotten off to a good start, or which players have we seen that have kind of captured our attention this year, and which ones are really going to hold over the course of the season. Trevor Story has been a pretty incredible story in Colorado, and watching what he has done. Last night he had kind of a rough one where he punched out 3 times, but everyone wondering if we got a guy that's ready to make a run at the home run record seemingly coming out of nowhere. That's probably not going to be the case, but to see him hit 7 home runs as early as he had, that's going to slow down. Of course, naturally, nobody can keep that pace up, but it's just a matter of how far is that going to be. I actually like this kid's swing. I've watched some people say, hey, it's just going to be another Kevin Moss. Don't get too excited. Or other guys that we've seen. Shelton years ago with the Detroit Tigers just had a first unbelievable couple of weeks of the season and then kind of fell off the face of the earth. I don't think it's going to be that significant. I like this kid's swing a lot. Walt Weiss likes him a ton. Got a chance to talk with him earlier last week. And so that's probably one. I'm sure it's going to feel back here a little bit. I think from a team standpoint, the Baltimore Orioles are going to lose a game at some point, but more importantly, it's a matter of whether or not that rotation is good enough to hang in there over 162. They're scoring a ton of runs. They are going to score a ton of runs this year, but there's other teams in the division that have some better starting pitching, at least that run a little bit deeper, and you figure that's going to catch up to them a little bit, and they'll be in a fight to try to hang in there to be a postseason team. So those are a couple that stick out, but certainly a lot of good stories coming out of the first week and a half of the season.
CJ, how about the American League champions, the Mets? And obviously we're talking to Bellotti around behind the glass about how we're a little bit worried about them. Should we be, or is this just some early season jitters getting things back in the mix?
I think they got a couple of bad combinations going where they're the offensive team that you probably thought they might have been. Like they're better because they bring in Cespedes and they bring in a couple of other guys in the middle infield and Neil Walker and David Wright's gone off to a great start. But their foundation is their pitching, right? So we know their offense is going to be hot and cold, and we got them on a little bit of a cold streak early on here in the season. The thing that makes you just a little bit nervous, and it's very easy to get Mets fans nervous, is what is going on in the starting rotation so far with Jacob deGrom dealing with a lat issue. Probably nothing significant. He's only going to skip one start. It's not a DL stint for him. But then Matt Harvey, a little bit concerning. He was my preseason Cy Young Award pick, looking at him last year and thinking, okay, no limits at all this year for him. He's going to go out, he's going to throw 220 innings, and he's going to light it up. And it's been a slow start for him. Only 5 strikeouts in 11-plus innings. That was a little bit concerning. It is only April. You got to deal with weather. But when you start to see just a couple of nicks in the rotation, Steven Matz really struggled in his first start. It makes you a little bit anxious. I don't think that's going to hold. The foundation is that starting rotation, and they'll get Zach Wheeler back at some point and only get stronger. But hopefully, Matt Harvey, it's not a big deal, and hopefully Jacob deGrom, it's not a big deal. But if it were, that would be a significant problem for the Mets.
Well, I remember, watching him in the spring training, and they talking about Harvey. They referenced the increased revolutions on his slider. That's a pitch that was back in the arsenal that was kind of on hiatus for a little bit here. So, is it a mechanical thing? Is it a rust thing? Is it a fatigue thing from last year? Specifically, why is Matt Harvey not putting the baseball by people?
The way that they kind of finished out spring training was weird, right? If you guys remember, I think he pitched, I want to say it was 3 or 4 innings at the end of spring training and then pitched on 3 days rest. It wasn't the traditional pitch 5 days, and then the season starts. Like, that's usually how you want to end their spring training. I don't know what the reason was behind it. And then he had a longer break in between his second start, which was a little bit strange. I think it was 7 days in between the second one. So I didn't like that part of it. Inconsistent programming in between. Pitchers are such creatures of habit, and what they do in between starts needs to be consistent. So I don't know if it was part of that. I don't know if its expectations were really high. I remember the whole thing with the blood clot and the bladder infection that he had, and that whole deal seemed to really tick him off a little bit. as well in the process. Just a little bit of a disruption at the end of spring training for me, but need to get him back where he's pitching every 5 days, where he's back in his routine. I don't think it's anything physical. I think it's, not being in that perfect routine, which, I guess the Mets had to do it. But I didn't like the way spring training ended. I didn't like the way that they've taken some time in between starts, because remember this too, and I put this on Major League Baseball. The Mets played on Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
So because they played on Sunday night, that was added late. They had 3 days off in the first 5 days of the season.
Yeah, very quirky.
That shouldn't happen.
Yep.
It's different. This is a different kind of sport. You never have back-to-back off days in a Major League season. It never happens. And the Mets had 3 of actually 4 where ended up being off because ESPN flexed the game on Sunday night. They probably should not be allowed to do that. I know it was a great game matchup with the World Series, but they should not be allowed to do that if that's going to cause a team to have 3 off days in the first week.
We're sizing up the start of the baseball season. CJ Nitkowski, of course, MLB analyst, Fox Sports 1, co-host Eye on Baseball Saturdays at 10 to noon Eastern here on CBS Sports Radio.
CJ, staying in the NL East, Bryce Harper could be on the one of the bigger talking points at the start of the season, simply because his OPS is 1.23, but it's because of something else that he's kind of espousing, and that's more fun in baseball. For a lay person who's not deep into the history of the game, what does we need to have more fun in baseball mean to you?
I think he wants it to be where he wants players to be a little bit more expressive and be able to be expressive without worrying about any kind of retaliation. He wants guys to show some personality, and I think the idea there is that we're going to draw in some younger fans. We want to make sure that baseball's fun. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of kids out there that just find the sport boring. It's not for everybody. I got 2 boys. They love it, but it's not always the case in every family, especially nowadays where attention spans are even smaller. Baseball can be a slow-paced game. And so I think from that standpoint, he wants to see guys have a little bit more fun. He wants to have a little bit more fun. I'm okay with all of that. The only thing I would say is that, when he kind of used that expression saying baseball is tired, if he wants to flip his bat or show expression, he should just do it. He should not be worried about repercussions, and then you can continue to have the conversation. On the flip side, you're never going to convince Madison Bumgarner that it's okay that somebody flips his bat on him. It's just not going to happen. He's not that kind of guy. He doesn't like that kind of stuff. He's got that old school kind of mentality and believes the game should be played with guys not showing a ton of expression and not even remotely coming close to showing other players up. So there's that balance in there for people. What is sportsmanship? What is fun? We want to see more personalities. Baseball has a big problem with marketing players nationally. It's just a problem. We don't have a LeBron James. We don't have a Kobe Bryant. We don't have players the way that the NFL does that are so recognizable on a national stage. And so that's probably a bigger marketing issue. But for me, it was a little bit of a straw man argument. If you want to flip your bat, and just see what happens. Some guys aren't going to care, and some guys will.
Well, CJ, by the way, does Bumgarner have a distaste for his own teammates when they do it? I'm curious.
I don't know. I mean, we've seen him. He gets mad at guys when they don't run out pop-ups on other teams. I don't know if he's ever gotten on his own team. I think for him, he's such a competitor, right? Once he gets in between the lines, he's so locked in. And sometimes when that happens, for a lot of athletes, regardless, I think, of your sport, is, you put things aside. You're not the same guy anymore. And so you're not as reasonable. You're not as rational when things are happening in the middle of competition. And something may tick you off while you're playing and while you're battling, and it might not bother you at all when you're sitting there in the dugout the other 4 days when you're not pitching. So I think it's just a product of the intensity that he brings when he's playing. And he goes a little bit overboard. I mean, I love that guy. I'd take him on my team any day of the week. But he does go a little bit overboard, in my opinion, as far as getting angry with guys. There was an issue, I think it was either last year or 2 years ago. Delino DeShields popped up. He saw the pop-up. He got a little bit mad and looked at it for a half a second, threw his bat down and started running. And Bumgarner was jawing at him on the way to first. It just seemed a little bit over the top. So I think he takes it a little far sometimes, but that's just the way it's built, man. He's built, and it's not going to change.
All right, we're off and running. Baseball's underway, and we're certainly happy about that. Siege, we'll listen to you on Saturday, 10 to noon Eastern, Eye on Baseball here on CBS Sports Radio. You see him on Fox Sports 1. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good talking with you guys. Have a good day.
Yep, see you, CJ.
There he is, CJ Nitkowski. Coming up